Okay, so welcome everyone to this session on working with references in Elsa. I'm Amber Noland. I'm the Senior User Engagement Specialist for Elsa. So in this session, we're going to walk through how to enter references, how to manage your references in the tool from the perspective of both a new edition and a prior edition title. I am going to go ahead and turn off my camera really quickly while I navigate. Okay. And so what you should be seeing now is you should be seeing Elsa. And so I have two screens open. I have a prior edition or a title that has content already in it. And then we have a fresh chapter here. So I'm going to take this from the fresh chapter. And so I just want to point out a few key stops and basic navigation. So if once you are in the right space, so just to remind anyone, once you come into Elsa, you'll click on the name of your project. It will bring you to this project overview page. If you are an author or editor, you should see all of the chapters on your title. And then if you're a contributor, you'll only see the ones to which you're assigned. So I will go ahead and click on a chapter which I'm assigned to. And this will bring me to my chapter. So once you're in your chapter, there are a couple of areas that you can look to manage your references. Give her a second while she is thinking. So if you look on this toolbar here, and you go to the Insert tab, here you'll see References and Further Reading Lists. So generally, you'll want to navigate to this References tab. This is where you can input new references. So if this is a first edition, this will most likely be completely blank. If you're working from a prior edition title, you should already have some references already in your chapter, the way that this title does. And so this is where you can add your references to your reference library. This will be different from your in-text citations, which I will get to in 1 second. So this will be where you manage your reference library. And then if you go down to this publishing assistant, you'll see that this often tracks references for a project. So this will tell you if there are too few in-text citations. That is what that alert is going to mean. So if you have text in but no in-text citations, you'll get an alert here. There's no text in this chapter at this time, so that's why this is showing as green. So to go ahead and add references completely from scratch, there are a couple of ways that you can do that. So if you go to this References tab, and my references are blank, we can either create a brand new reference from scratch the same way that you would in another reference manager, such as Mendeley or Zotero or EndNote, or you can paste your references in if you already have some reference list entries, or if you are working in another program like Mendeley or Zotero, you can actually export your entire reference list library, and then you can upload that into Elsa. For the sake of the demo, I'm going to paste some references in, so I have some already prepared. You can do multiple at a time. So I can save to library, or I can go ahead and create an in-text citation and save to library at the same time by clicking on this insert icon. I'm just going to save to library right now. And so one thing I want to point out while we're waiting for this to load is that Elsa also uses an internal referencing system used by all of Elsevier, or I should say by other products in Elsevier. So Science Direct, Scopus, And what that does is, so when you bring your references into Elsa, it will look for that in our reference database, and it will fill in any missing or incomplete information in your reference at that time. You may notice some slight variation in your reference from how it gets brought into Elsa to maybe how you had it in your reference list. This is because of how it is set up in our database. And so it will bring in the entry that is in our database. And I'll also talk through importing references from a Word file in just a little bit, but for now we'll go ahead and just see that those references were brought into our library. So what you're seeing here is now they're in our reference library. We can now go ahead and create our in-text citations. And so by clicking on either this icon here, we can insert as reference, or you can do it from this more options here. So insert reference. And you'll see that it inserts it into the text. This project is set up in AMA reference style. There are 9 reference styles that Elsevier uses. I won't go into all of them, but if you're ever curious, you can go up to the Resource Center and you can find that full list under Style and Permissions Guides. But for this project, it's set up in AMA, so that the references will automatically be formatted to AMA style. If you needed to change the reference style of the project, you'd want to contact your content manager. They can make an adjustment in the project settings, and then that will automatically update all references that are linked in the project without you having to do any additional work, which is great. But you'll see here that it's inserted the in-text citation, and you'll also see this purple pill here labeled references. This indicates that the reference has been cited in text and that it's what we call linked. So that way we can know that it's actually cited in the text versus just being a bibliographic entry. We want to actually see a full reference list just for clarity for publication.
Amber, can I have a question?
Of course. So, go ahead.
I see that it's numbered number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just to show how many references you have if we don't normally number references in a book?
So it'll depend on your reference style. So because this is a numbered reference style, it's going to show as 1, and then the subsequent references would be 2, 3, 4. And if you made any changes to that, like if you moved a reference around or inserted something before that, it would renumber them automatically.
Sure.
So it would become 2, 1 would become 2, et cetera, et cetera. If this were APA style, it would show as name date. And I can try to show that if we have time at the end. But if it were name date, it would show as the last name and then the date of publication. If it were bracketed style, it would show the number, but in brackets, obviously. So it's just the setting of the project.
Okay, so we choose that up front. So then, because a lot of books I work on, they're not numbered; they're just alphabetized.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll see that it's linked down here. And then if you need to make any changes to that reference, you can go up. You can either delete it here, or you can go back up to the toolbar. So I need to click into the actual writing area, go to references, and we'll see that there's a green check mark indicating that it is cited in text. If you needed to make any changes to the reference, you could just click on edit. And it's going to tell you that this is in the right space. So just letting you know that, and then you can edit the author names. If you needed to edit the DOI or look up the PubMed ID, you could do that from here, or you could change the type. If you wanted to delete the reference, we can go ahead and discard those changes. You can go ahead and just click the delete icon. I'm going to pop over to the previous edition. So if you have references, if you have a previous edition title and you are starting to work, you'll notice that many of the citations should already be included. And so you'll see in this area here, they're already under the purple pill. You could edit in the same way. So for example, maybe you wanted to make a change to this Larson title, you would do that in the same way by clicking on references and then just finding that. You could search try a different way. I must be searching incorrectly, but we'll go in here, try to find that reference. Okay, so we'll pick this one just for the example, and you could edit it here. If you're bringing in new references to a previous edition, you would do it in the same way. So you could go to the references tab and then click paste reference, or you could bring in your any new references from an RS file and put them into your reference library, and then you would cite them in text. So we'll try to get an example here. So we clicked on the reference, and you can actually click on the reference to edit it, but if you click on it, it should be hyperlinked and it will bring you down to the reference area. If you click on it in the link reference area, it will bring you up. So if we go here and then we say this is a new reference that we've already added to our library. Then that will become reference 2. So you'll know that you have linked references in your text, your previous edition, because they'll be under that purple pill, and that will allow you to do the renumbering and the adding and have that all changed automatically because it's linked and it's already available to you. Okay, we had some pre-submitted questions, so I'm going to look at those really quickly. So we talked about first edition versus previous edition reference management. If you do have a prior edition and you notice that it doesn't have a linked references section like this one, please contact your content manager so they can take a look at it and possibly reach out to our setup team, but you should have linked references for your previous edition title so you can more easily manage those. We talked about the reference library versus in-text citations. If you do have a reference list that includes both in-text citations and bibliographic entries, you want to go ahead and make, here's an example of an unlinked reference, just for FYI. But if you needed to create bibliographic entries, you would do that by creating a further reading list. So you can add references in the same way that we've already discussed. And you could, for example, click on this one. I think I need to go up a little bit. You should be able to add them as a further reading list from this icon. Let's try going back over here. So if you click on further reading list, and we have some that are already in our library, I'll go ahead and pick one that's not in there to show you how you could do that from scratch. Click on further reading list and paste reference. And click on this and then select, instead of insert as reference, select insert as a further reading list. And you'll see down here, it's separated those out. So if you have a combined reference list, it is ideal if you pick out those bibliographic entries and enter those as further reading list entries rather than part of your reference list. And we'll talk about importing Word file in just a second. And then if we have time, we can go to how to change the reference style. So let's talk about importing a reference list. So let's say you have a Word file. Ideally, if you are working in a previous edition, you would be making your changes directly in Elsa because that content is already available to you. But if you are working on a brand new title or a brand new project, you can bring in references from a Word file. So let's see here. So I have an example Word file that I'll use. We'll go to Word import, search for my file. And you'll select the reference style of the original document. So I think this one is also set up in superscript. And while we're waiting for that, I will try to pull up that Word file so you can see there are some things to remember when setting up your Word file or before importing it into Elsa that will ensure a successful import. And once the import is successful, you'll see this green check mark. You'll see that the content has been imported, but most importantly, it should have brought in references from that Word file automatically and automatically added them into the reference library and then also cited them in text. So I will pull up original file. So just some things that I want to point out that will help ensure the successful import. So if you worked in EndNote, you'd want to make sure that your field codes are turned off. So we have instructions for how to do that in our support center, and I can add them to the description for this recording once I post it on our YouTube account. But there are instructions on how to do that. You would just need to create a plain text version of your file, and you should be able to just save it as an unlinked version. But please do turn those off before importing your file, just to make sure that your references can be recognized. You'll want to have a corresponding in-text citation for every entry in your reference list for the reasons that we talked about earlier. Bibliographic entries won't be recognized. They'll just show as unlinked text, as plain text, and it makes it harder for our production teams to see which references are actually cited in text versus part of a further reading list or a bibliography. You'll want to make sure that the section is titled references the way it is here. If, for example, you had labeled this like this, 1.6 as part of an outline, you would just want to remove that numeric entry so Elsa knows what it's looking for. Elsa is, you are importing a Word file rather than uploading it, for example, to a manuscript submission system so that Elsa can scan the document and link those references we talked about earlier. And so this just helps make sure that the system knows what section is actually references. And then you want the corresponding number next to the references if you're using that kind of style. If you're using APA or your project is set up in APA, Elsa should automatically convert those when they're brought in. But it does help if you're using like a superscript or a numbered style to have that corresponding number. I think that is pretty much, those are the main things to consider when importing a Word file. And I want to make sure we have time for questions. So why don't I pop back over to Elsa? And for those that may be content managers or curious about how to change the reference style settings, I'll show how to do that. Just for anyone interested, the only people that have access to these project settings, but for any authors that are viewing this, this is just an FYI. The only people that have access to this are content managers, so they would be the only ones that are able to change the reference style of the project, but it is an easy switch. So if you go to this project settings tab, and then you click from the drop down, let's say we want this to be APA, as we talked about earlier, and then click save. We go back out. Go back to our blank chapter that we had before. So you'll see that those references that were previously superscript, they were superscript also in the original Word file. Those have now been changed to API style, excuse me.
If
Go ahead.
quick, if they uploaded the Word files from the previous edition, would the system automatically pick the reference style from the previous edition?
No, so when the setup team sets up the project, they should select that reference style, and then they'll import the documents in that project settings that I just showed before. They have essentially like a zip file of all of the figures in the Word files, and then they import them, and they should be brought in whatever they chose in the project settings. So so I'm assuming that they pick the same style that was used in the previous edition.
Okay.
They could easily make that change if they didn't by accident, but they should be using that previous edition style to answer your question. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just curious, like how it was set up, if it was set up that way from the previous edition or not.
Yes, they should. They should do
Okay.
that. So we have a few minutes for questions. So I will pause there and just see if there's anything that I can help answer.